They are, of course, the grey-crowned crane. And I think they're very magnificent indeed. If you listen very carefully, you might just be able to hear them going bok, 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 bok. They sound like sort of chickens with a slightly trumpetish voice. Let me play you their call. Crane, search, grey-crowned. This is what they sound like. Good God. I had no idea that they sounded quite that horrific. Another fairly amusing part of the morning is Tristan's question. He says, he's quite envious of their hairstyles. Am I? Absolutely I am. I mean, those are magnificent hairdos they've got there. Tristan, you've got a lot of hair, my friend, but I'm afraid you will not even you will be able to pull off something like that. They look a little bit like Taylor when she's just got out of bed in the morning. I wonder if Taylor would appreciate that. There, that's a live call. They've been inspired by the bird app I've got. Fantastic stuff. Now, Ross, you say they're endangered. Yeah, they are. Crowned cranes are not... most crane species, actually, throughout the world are endangered. And this is no exception. And, I mean, you get two different kinds of crowned cranes. You get the black crowned crane and the grey crowned crane. This one is obviously the grey version. And they are endangered. And I'm just wondering, one of my other bird apps might give us a little bit of information about how many there are left in the world. Crane. No, not canary. That's a R in it. There we go. Grey crowned crane. Uncommon to locally common resident, listed as vulnerable in South Africa due mainly to loss of breeding range and reduction of suitable habitat. Global population estimates to be about 10,000 birds. The Southern African population about 6,000 to 7,000, so about 3,000 in this region. So yes, vulnerable, not necessarily endangered, but certainly vulnerable. I just want to see exactly what they eat. Omnivorous, apparently. They eat seeds, leaves, frogs, lizards, rodents, shrews, small children, and nuts. I made up the last two. Cutworms, armyworms, millipedes, crabs, grasshoppers, and beef stroganoff. And James, you're wondering about nesting habits. Well, it just so happens that the bird app I have will tell us that. Nests built on aquatic vegetation, so they're often associated with marshy areas like this one. And in Botswana, you'll find them, I guess, or you'll find the wattled cranes, certainly, in the delta. Also nests on dry ground and occasionally in trees on old stick nests. Usually clutch size is 3 eggs, incubation 29 to 31 days. Both sexes will help to warm the eggies. Shall we play their call once more? I want to see if I can induce a live call. I know it's a little bit nasty, but it's just so funny. I'll use the different bird app this time, because this bird app might have a slightly better recording. Here we go. Oh, that's much more attractive than the one we had before. Very nice. Stop. Let's go back to them and see if they'll call for us. No. They're just standing there looking deeply confused. Behind them, an enormous herd of zebra. And and they, unlike their wildebeest friends, have not headed to the south and remain the focus now of the lions, as Taylor was showing you earlier. The lions were eyeing a stripy piece of breakfast for themselves, but I suspect, like most lions, they will do not much but lie about the place. Maritza, sorry, can we have that question once more? I was just thinking about Maritza's giraffe question from a few days ago, and so I lost this one. Can we have it again? Sorry, Alice. Maritza, you say, are there any other migrations I would like to experience elsewhere? Well, let me tell you, there's a very large migration of, well, there are two, of cob up in the Sudan. I think if things were to calm down there and the likelihood of my being shot 3 or 4 times by different parties were to reduce, I'd love to go and see that. Then, a few months ago, at the end of a sort of celebratory dinner, shall we say, I had a conversation with Mr. Wallington where he explained... You see, just the mention of him sets the cranes to fright and calling. Anyway, I had a conversation with him about the caribou migration up north, well, in the northern parts of Canada. And he suggested that what we should do is I, as the presenter, should follow the herds on horseback and possibly even in a helicopter, land and then ride after them. And this concoction of how we were going to broadcast this massive, expansive caribou migration followed by the wolves became so outlandish that I immediately wanted to go there. And so, yes, the caribou migration on horseback or from a helicopter, whichever comes first, would be very exciting to me. Thank you, Maritza. All righty, let us carry on now. Right. We're going to go across to the crowned Taylor now and hope that she's managed to tame those blonde locks, unlike these grey crowned cranes.
I didn't hear one thing that was said there, unfortunately. There was too much giggling going on. But I did hear crowned Taylor. James, please can you make me a crown? That would be really nice. We're trying to find our lions, but we seem to have lost them. The reason why I didn't want to off-road is because they were heading straight towards a sort of marshy area, and it can be very sensitive around there, so I don't want to drive there, especially when we've had quite a bit of rain. I'm just trying to figure out exactly where we were. We've had to do a huge loop to jump up on some of these roads to come a bit closer. There were massive herds of buffalo and zebra behind us, so maybe we will... Oh, hang on, no, now I can sort of put 2 and 2 together. We must have been up there, because I can see where they're having breakfast. There was some guests. Hang on, let's take this road into this thicket. I think maybe we'll get lucky. It's a really tough one to sort of try and move around, but let's go here. Maybe we'll get lucky. It's amazing how many little grassy tracks have just sort of popped up. I keep opening maps and things like that to have a look where I am, and some of the tracks are on, but not all of them. I don't think this one was on, but this actually takes us in the direction that we want to go, because they were heading for this tree line. Now, Miss Lynn, you're wondering, where do we cross the river? Is there a bridge? There are actually many bridges. I haven't crossed too many of them. I crossed one when I arrived via well, it was a very bumpy ride on in. Can you see them? Jahawi says that there's 2 bridges. I think I crossed one of them. What is the town where you cross the Mara River to come into the Conservancy? Okay, Marianta, apparently. That was the one that I crossed, and then there's another one. So you can go over them like that, but apparently sometimes the water level gets so high that you can't actually even cross the bridges. So that's quite hectic, which I suppose is normal. Here's another group of zebra. Let's see if they're looking out. But it will be the bridges that James and Scott were crossing as well, to get into the other side, really. Maybe one day I'll be able to show you. I'm also not sure if there's any really signal down that way. We're going to keep searching for our lions. They couldn't have gone too far. We just need to use the zebra's help, and hopefully they'll alert us of their presence. Tristan, however, is with my favorite pride of lions in the whole wide world.
I was Taylor, but I've left them to contemplate life and to sleep the day away. They all started to flop down. In fact, when we left, there was just one of them that was still clinging on to keeping its eyes open, just like kids in a way. When it's time for nap, then there's always one that's going to try and struggle and fight to stay awake, but eventually it will be claimed by the sleeping pattern that lions have. So we've left them to enjoy their day, and now we're just bumbling about because we're going to slowly head towards Hosana. We know that he's on his kill still, but in the meantime I haven't really explored much in the last 2 drives because we've had such good luck that I haven't had an opportunity to drive too much. Seb, oh no, it's just disappeared. It looked like a little long-billed crombeck that was straight in front of us here, and they're such cool little birds. Have you got it there? No, that might be the waxbills up there, or the canaries. Let's see, what's that? There we go. Oh, turn your head now. One of the weaver species. Now, they're very difficult with the females when you're trying to ID them. I would imagine it might be a masked weaver. No. Sit still. I'm trying to see what you are. Now it's got its head right behind a branch. Now, which weaver are you? There we go. It's out and it's feeding on these flowers. What are you? Now let me have a look. I'm going to have to consult my book for this one just to make 100% sure before I make a call on it. I have an idea of which one it is, but I just want to make 100% certain. Now with weaver species, like I was saying, the females tend to be really difficult to tell apart as opposed to the males. The males often are a nice, easy color. Now Siberia Zumi, you think village weaver. Siberia Zumi, what I was thinking, but the problem is I'm trying to see its eye. Remember, the village weaver female will have a reddish colored eye, and I can't see the eye nicely enough to see if it has got red in it, but it does look very village weaver-ish in its appearance. Oh, come on, show. Oh no, there it's gone. Maybe somebody got a screenshot. It's definitely not our lesser mast, and it didn't have too much yellow on the tail, which is what the southern mast weaver will have. So for those that are interested in what we're basically discussing, and you can see how similar these birds will look, but here are the 2 kind of options that we've got. We've got the southern masked weaver, which is this one over here, and you can see it's got that sort of yellowish on the wings and a fairly drab head, and also has a reddish eye. But then the village weaver, which is above it, you can see is very similar. It just has less yellow on this rump area, on this base of the tail, and it seems to have a lot more of a sort of mottled back than what we see with the southern masked weaver. The lesser masked weaver is easy because it's got the white eye, so we know it wasn't that. So it was one of these 2, but I would go village weaver would probably be my call. So Siberia Zumi, well done. That is what I would go with as well. Now there was lots of birds here. It was a nice bird party, and it's because of the flowering bush willow that they're here. That's why we've got some of the weaver species, and I'm sure at some point there was a crombeck in all of this, but it disappeared. It went down lower than the weaver itself. But nice to find. That's a nice sighting. I haven't seen too many of the weavers, and they soon are going to be very active. As soon as we get our first rains, then we're going to get those weaver nests being constructed and hives of activity around some of the dams. We see a lot of it. I remember on Cheetah Plains last year, we used to see it all the time, especially at the Buffalo Pan and also down at Djuma Dam on Buffalo's Hook. There used to be lots of activity with the weavers in that area. Right, I wonder if we can find ourselves an owl somewhere in the Mulawati. I think that'll be a nice place to go and check. It seems as though somebody has driven around this area this morning already, but let's go and have a look. Maybe our friend the rose eagle owl will be out and about. There's tracks for a female leopard somewhere. I wonder who this is and if this was maybe Tundi from yesterday. But there's tracks for a female leopard. I'm trying to sort of get into a position where you can see them. Seb, will you be able to see these ones over my shoulder? So chitty chatty Meg, while Seb's trying to see the leopard tracks that are coming up this way, you were asking about the owl with the pink eyeliner, which is our rose eagle owl, so we'll try and find them. This is the best place to look for them. But there you can see the tracks for a female leopard, so coming up out of the Mulawati, and it looks very small though, so I wonder if this is maybe not Shongile's tracks. I'll have a look and just see how fresh they are. They don't look as though they're too fresh. You can see some of the leaf litters on top. It hasn't been squashed down into the track. So I think these are from yesterday morning. But I'll have another look and just make sure. And while we do that, let's go back to Taylor McCurdy, who doesn't have pink eyeliner, but she does have big golden locks, which I suppose could rival the eagle owl.
I think we are. There we go. So we didn't really hear that. There's a huge herd of buffalo. I thought these lions would have maybe come in this direction, but it seems as though they're not around here unless they're just laying down on the grass somewhere. It's very difficult to try and find them. The grass is not short here. You can see how the grass almost extends past the buffalo's belly. There's also a couple of young buffalo calves in here. You can spot them because they're a much lighter brown in colour compared to the adults. There's a little bottom. Hello. Lots of them around here, which is quite nice to see. That's something that we haven't seen for a very long time in the Sabi sand. There's a young buffalo calf. Hang on now. What are these zebra looking at? I think those lions are in that marsh area, in that river line. There's a group of zebra that are alarming, and they're constantly looking down. You might be able to see them. That group that's sort of huddled up, the 3 or 4 bums that are together. Yeah, sort of at about 10 o'clock. There's also an elephant. I'm just scanning. You can just hear them every now and then. They're very focused down there. And that's how we realized that the lions had moved. Is that lions weren't necessarily, the zebra weren't necessarily alarming, but they were just sort of staring. But let's go around. Let's see if we can get towards that area, and maybe we'll spot them. But they could also, like I said, those lions seem to have been moving around quite some time. So they could be looking for a nice shady spot to sit. And I think when the sun breaks through this thin layer of clouds, it could be quite warm today. You can actually I see James. James is, I think, on the river road down that side. Just keep my eyes open here. If I can spot them. They're definitely coming in this direction. Hello, Zebbies. But they really do just disappear in this tall grass. It's a very easy thing to lose. We need the wildebeest to come back, although the buffalo will help in keeping the grass nice and short. It's so dense in there. Good spot though. I think if I was a hot cat, I'd probably want to go and rest underneath those beautiful tall trees. I don't know what trees they are, but they look like gum. They remind me of blue gums, the way how tall they are, and sort of leaves only starting quite high up. But we'll carry on searching. We'll do a couple of loops around here. Maybe we'll pop past and check on the jackal den. It's not far. Maybe we'll get lucky. James, however, is not far away. He's on the other side of this marshy area. It looks like he's heading home early.
No, I'm not heading home early, Taylor. I wouldn't think of such a thing. Let us look at this line of zebras as we drive along this road. I too am hoping to find some lions that might hunt these zebras a bit later. There we have them. And they're all heading sort of in the same direction, and I suspect that they are going to cross over not the Mara, but they're probably going to cross over towards those marshy areas south of where we live at Angama, and that's because it's very green over there, and I think that would be a good spot for them to be. They certainly seem to be moving as one, except for this one, who is facing us off. Go on. Yes. Don't you dare look at me in that tone of voice again. No, 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 no. Carry on, as you were. Go on. Yes. Don't make me speak again. Don't wag your tail at me like that either. He's challenging us, Craig, you see that? No, he's not. He took one look at your beard and decided, I have never seen so many zebra here, or anywhere. Rochelle, you want to know what environmental disasters normally occur in Africa? Well, Rochelle, I think I know what you mean. The greatest environmental disaster in Africa, of course, is the human being, but that's the same throughout the world. In fact, less so in Africa than it probably is in many other parts of the world. I guess natural phenomena that cause problems in Africa would include things like cyclones on the eastern coast, around Mozambique, that area. I suppose there might be... what else? You know, we don't have huge natural disasters. No real earthquake problems. We don't have volcanoes that erupt on our heads from time to time. Very little in the way of coastal issues with things like tsunamis and that sort of thing. And although we do get cyclones on the southeastern coast, they really are not particularly severe. So the most dire natural disaster we have in Africa is drought. And drought is the limiting factor, I suppose. Many parts of Africa are water-starved, and so that, of course, creates a whole suite of problems, a whole lot of knock-on effects. But also, because Africa's landmass is so ancient, and by that I don't mean it's obviously no older than the rest of the world, but the landmass exposed to the soil is quite interesting here. We're just smelling some dung there and then got a bit of a fright from each other. Because the landmass is old, and that means that it has not had a large amount of recent volcanic activity that, say, Southeast Asia has, it means that a lot of the soil is not particularly fertile. And so if you get a drought, then you immediately have a really catastrophic problem. So, I mean, grass will disappear, and because of the number of people and their cattle and goats and sheep and that sort of thing, a drought can really savage a population of wildlife and therefore of people as well. Then I suppose the other natural disaster that occurs possibly more so in Africa than anywhere else in the world, with the exception maybe of the deep jungles of South America and parts of Southeast Asia, is disease. We have some fairly major diseases on this continent that have yet to be dealt with, and malaria is the foremost amongst those. Yes, you get malaria in other parts of the world. Nowhere near does it, or nowhere else in the world does it affect people like it affects them here in Africa. And there are still, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the number of deaths caused by malaria in Africa still outnumber the number of deaths caused by HIV/AIDS, by tuberculosis, and by cancers. So malaria is still a major issue, especially for little people. Now, let's look at this zebra here. He's got a very dark neck, but that's not what I wanted to show you. What I want to show you is the lack of a mane. And somebody asked about this a few days ago, or a few weeks ago, and I've been noticing it more and more. But the zebras in the Mara, you do get the odd one with no mane at all. And they look like, like when you first see a little schoolboy who's had his head shaved for the first time. Not shaved completely, but I mean with the sort of haircut I've got these days. Well, they look like that. Rochelle, do you want to know if zebra, buffalo and wildebeest ever sleep? The answer is absolutely they do. They have to. They must sleep. But they don't sleep like we do. They don't have a period of, I don't know, anything between 4 and 8 hours where they completely shut down. If they did that, they'd be eaten and killed very quickly. And so they sleep, sometimes not while walking, but they'll sleep in the middle of the day quite often. They'll sleep while they are, or doze while they're ruminating. And often in a herd like this, some will sleep and some will stay awake. So there's a kind of random distribution of sleep, if you like, where some will be awake always and some will sleep. And that's the same for wildebeest, zebra, buffalo, topi, all the 13 species of antelope that you get here, and there's 10 species that you get at Djuma. They have a very similar sort of sleeping pattern. It is only lions, really, that are able to sleep as soundly as they do. And we've followed lions for many nights now out here. And yeah, some will sleep for 4 or 5, sometimes 6 hours at a time. But they'll get up and they'll move for 15, 20 minutes and they'll sleep again for another hour or 2, but then they'll get up and move again. So I don't know how many other species there are in the world that sleep for a dedicated period like we do. And I wonder if actually we're naturally supposed to do that, or if perhaps it's a sort of result of modern living, if you like. By modern I mean dating back to the age or dawn of agriculture. Because, of course, before agriculture, before that occurred, people did much less work than they do now, and the age of agriculture brought with it the work day that we have now pretty much used to. And things used to be a lot easier when we hunted and gathered and then sat about. Okay, Tristan has managed to find himself some signal. I have no idea what he's looking at. I don't know what it's... Vaguely, it could be a stone, might be a piece of grass, might be a lion, don't know.
Well, James, we're not really looking at anything at this stage. We are looking at the road in front of us so that we don't crash, which is probably a good thing. But what we are going to do is just check quickly at Janet Jackson's hole and see if maybe she is home, or he, or whatever he is, or it is, should I say, and see if they're not hanging around at the moment. I don't know if it will be. Seb was telling me they have been checking, but no sign of it. Yes, there it is. Oh no, it's run away. Janet Jackson, you're too fast for us. It was there were spots, that briefly glimpse of them as they went up and higher into the tree. Oh no, why are you so unrelaxed? We'll have to come back at night. Maybe night is the time to be here, but there was definitely a shooting of spots going up and through. Seems to be very shy, Janet Jackson, is unlike the family name, really, who are all performers. So maybe we'll have to change the name to something else. Let's go forward a little bit, Seb. Let's see if those smaller holes we can see anything. But most definitely there was a sign of our Janet being there. No, the smaller holes I can't see anything either. It must be just between the two at the moment. It must know exactly where it must hide for us not to be able to see it. So it's a bit unfortunate. We'll have to keep coming here, and hopefully over time it'll get more and more relaxed with us, and we'll be able to actually see it properly. Oh well, at least we know that she is alive and well and is still inside the hole, and hopefully over time, like I say, we'll be able to see them a lot more, and I think at night would be probably our best bet. And I just saw tracks for lions as well. Now I think these lions must have been the Styx Pride that was here. I know that they were seen, not yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the night before, they were seen around Tree or Twin Dams, so I think that's their tracks that then go south again. I believe they were seen somewhere on Little Gari or Vessels yesterday, so I think that's where they go. Snazzy, you're wondering if the wild parks like this ever become overpopulated. Now, I suppose you mean in terms of certain species of animals. There's a beautiful bird while we discuss this. But yes, it can happen, particularly in the wild, well, the parks that are fenced. You can get a situation where you'll get an overpopulation of certain animals that can cause a problem. So you'll find in those kind of areas, they have to have a lot more management in terms of the animals here. Because it's such a large area, the animals really just take care of themselves, same as in the Masai Mara, and there's very little that's actually needed to be done in terms of controlling populations. But we do get sometimes oversupplies, particularly in the years that we have a lot of rain. You'll get a massive increase in hippo and buffalo numbers, and that causes a major problem when we have the reverse effect and we come into droughts. Because those big bulk grazers are around, they then just smash everything and trample everything, and it becomes a problem for the other animals. Also, an overpopulation of hippos within a water source can cause a nutrient spike, which causes blue-green algae, which potentially could be poison or toxic towards other animals. There we go, I'll get it out eventually. But our lilac-breasted roller is looking ever so beautiful in this morning light. It often sits on this particular branch. I see it here most times I drive down Weaver's Nest, and it is a perfect branch for a roller to be sitting. You can see the bright blue on the wings there, those long tail streamers that come down. It is a magnificent looking bird. Pity about its call though, it squawks a little bit. It would be nice if it had a beautiful call to go with its beautiful coloration. And I can hear lots of birds alarm calling in front of us. I want to quickly just go and check it out. There was Franklin's and grey go-away birds that are calling in front. But in terms of the overpopulation, just getting back to that quickly, you can most definitely get it. So elephants are another one that sometimes can overpopulate if conditions are right. Even lions to a degree. It just depends on the area. So you've got to be a little bit careful with those, particularly fence reserves here in the Kruger and in Mara. We don't have to worry as much because the space is so big that the animals, like I say, regulate themselves a little bit. The only one that's a bit of a concern in this area is elephants, but then again, our history of knowing the area is so short that we don't know whether there's an oversupply of elephants or not, and whether they will balance themselves out at some point. Now the go-away birds were alarm calling from here, and the Franklins burst across the road. Just want to see and switch off for 2 seconds. Just trying to see if I can see the go-away birds. Can you see any, Seb?
Nothing yet.
Nothing, yeah? No, they're in front. They probably are near Hosana, because we're not too far from where Hosana has his kill and where Tundi and Shadow was yesterday, so I think it's probably for him. If he's up in the tree, they'll be able to see him from quite far, and that's maybe why they're making a bit of a noise. But let's just head in that direction quickly and see if maybe we get lucky with our young fella. Patty, wondering if the animals ever approach our vehicle? Quite often they do, actually. Oh, that's a surprise. I didn't expect to see you guys here. So some nyalas that are around. 2 young males. So they do come close. I mean, we've seen elephants that walk right up to the sides of the cars from a distance. Even the lions, you often find that the cats will come and lie in your shade, particularly if there's a carcass and there's not too much shade around. Then you'll find lions or leopards will actually come lie right up against the side of the car to use them for shade. I know in the Mara they do it quite a bit. So it does happen fairly regularly that animals will approach us. The animals like these nyala that we see now, they're a little bit more shy. They don't really like to come close to the vehicles. But the animals we spend a lot of time with, so the lions, the leopards, the elephants, they tend to be quite relaxed and will approach the vehicle most times that we're with them. And it's not that they want to come and interact with the vehicle, it's just that they don't really care about it, and they kind of just walk right up next to it. It doesn't bother them at all. Now that can't be nutritious. This nyala is eating pretty much a dead tree. It's a broken branch that's on the ground. Those leaves are dead. You could hear the crunching of them. So I'm surprised they're eating that. Maybe they've been pushed out by Hosana being around this area, and that's why they're not in the drainage section close to Treehouse Dam. But I'm sure they'll go in on my right-hand side and go in there, which is far better habitat than where they are now. And they're now in big open section, which is not really normal for nyala. They like to be in thickets and deep drainage lines. I'll tell you what, let's go towards Hosana, because if these two carry on their current course, they're going to be walking straight into him, and even though he's got carcasses in the tree, he will still have some semblance of interest in any animal that comes past, or any prey species. So it'll be interesting to watch his reaction if he is in the tree and he sees these nyala coming, whether he'll decide to try and hunt them or if he's going to just watch them come by. And so I think with his youthful exuberance, he would probably in all likelihood try and go after them. I don't see him in the tree at the moment. The tree is just on my right hand side. I see a hyena at the bottom of the tree though. Yeah. That I do see. Right, well, let's see if we can't get in here quickly and find out where Hosana is and who these hyenas are. And while we do that, let's go to Taylor McCurdy, who I think's got into the jackal den to see if anybody is at home.
So we've come back to the jackal den, but unfortunately there is still nobody home. I wonder where they have gone. I don't think that they've gone too far away from here. Might have happened because of all the rain that we have of course had, but we'll carry on. A little bit sad because I would have liked to have spent more time with the jackals, of course. That's just one of those things. If they want to move dens, they will move dens, but I think they're in this vicinity. I think they're somewhere around here. We just need to figure out where the next spot is, and I still reckon that the best chance we have of finding this den is coming in with the infrared and the thermal cameras and sort of checking around here, see if there's any little heat signatures popping up. Like I said, that's how we found them the first time. Very lucky to come across something like that. Well, it's pretty quiet out here. We lost our lions. I suspect they've gone into a marshy area, which unfortunately we're not going to go bashing about in. So we'll have to try and find some more lions. Maybe the other sausage tree females come out this afternoon. Who knows? Sorry, it's very bumpy here. We go over all these things. Just having a little look around. I think we might go towards the river. Wondering if there's any tortoises in the Mara. I'm most certain that there are tortoises here. I don't know what species of tortoise though that you would find here. I will have to find a reptile list of some sort. Jahawi, do you know what species of tortoise are here? No, Jahawi also is not 100% sure as to what tortoises occur here. I don't know if you get leopard tortoises. The leopard tortoises are rodeo. Leopard tortoises are very common throughout Africa, so maybe they're around here. I don't know if we'd find any of the Speaks hinge tortoises, but we'll have to go and do a little bit of research on that to figure out. But I haven't seen a tortoise yet. The only reptile I've seen a chameleon. I've seen a variety of skinks. I've seen agamas, and I've seen a snake. But Tristan has not got a reptile. He has got a hyena, and I wonder if he's at the den.
I'm not at the den. We're at this carcasses that Hosana had yesterday. No sign of him at the moment. Maybe he's gone for a drink at Treehouse Dam in the meantime. But there is a hyena lurking below, patiently waiting. So you can see that there's very little left of the impala carcass. It's been pretty much stripped clean by Hosana. He's eaten all of that. Just the one hoof of the impala hanging down. You can see that metatarsal gland quite clearly now, that big black puffy patch. That's the gland that the impalas have on the back of their back legs. So it's only them that has that. And then the steenbok seems as though it hasn't actually been touched yet. It's still dangling high up in the branches right at the top there. He's been turned around. It's not facing the same way, so I think maybe a little bit has been eaten off the rump area. But there's the steenbok, and it's a very small steenbok. It's a little baby. I thought it was slightly bigger than what it actually is, but that's also up in the tree. So the hyenas are at the bottom. No sign of Hosana at all. I can't see him anywhere. I'm looking under all the bushes and trees to see if he's maybe just resting. Apparently he was in the tree when we were at Twin Dams, which is not even 10 minutes ago, so I don't know where he's gone, but Treehouse Dam is close enough that maybe he's gone for a wander just to go and have a little bit of a drink. Now I'm not sure which hyena we've got here. Maybe some of you will be able to identify our hyena. I would imagine it's the same one from last night that's been lurking around patiently waiting for some scraps. It's difficult to ID them when they're lying flat like this. Don't see their markings nearly as easily. I can tell you that it is a young hyena. The ears are completely whole. You can see the spots are still very bright, and it's not a very big individual. So maybe one of the offspring, like Jan or one of those, could be them. So it'll be interesting to know who it actually is. But it's amazing how much of that carcass is been picked clean. There's literally nothing left of that impala. So I think he must have dropped some of it as well, given that the hyenas are around. And oh, there he is. You see him. He's right in front of us. It's amazing their camouflage, actually. He's sitting directly in front of me, just through there somewhere. So where are you, Hosana? There we are. So you can see how difficult it is to actually see them sometimes. So luckily he was kind of panting a little bit and his movement caught my eye. But you can see that is one hot, full kitty, and it's not even gotten very hot yet. He's going to be suffering a little bit later, but a happy cat nonetheless. He's got that face of contentness. He's just kind of happy that he's got food and he's taking it all. And you can see he's smelling a little bit. You can't still be hungry, so I don't think he's going to go back up into the tree anytime soon, and especially with that hyena lurking so close, I'd imagine he's just going to rest here for a while and wait for the heat of the day to pass and then go up later, much like what we saw yesterday. No one likes me. You want to know if hyenas can climb trees? Nope. And that's why the leopard puts those carcasses up in the trees, so that these hyenas don't get to the food. If he had that on the ground, he would have been muscled off by these hyenas and they would have stolen it from him. So that's why he's put it up there, and it's a really clever tactic that leopards have, and it's a great skill that he's learned from his mom, because some of the other leopards out here tend not to do it. So we know that Shadow is very bad at it. She often leaves carcasses on the ground and they get stolen by hyenas. So it seems as though Hosana has learned his lesson and he's put his carcasses in trees, and that means that he at least can feed off them for quite some time. So he's done very well in that regard. It's quite funny to watch hyenas. You'll be surprised though how high a hyena can jump to get to food. I once saw a female down in the south of the Sabi Sands called Warthog Wallow female, and she had put up a carcass in a tree that you would think would have been safe. It was quite high up. I didn't think there would be really too much worry, and a hyena came along and it jumped very high and it managed to grab onto just the tip of the leg, and that was enough to unseat the carcass and bring it crashing down to the ground. And at that stage Warthog Wallow had walked off to go and fetch her cub, and she came back with the cub to a scene of no food. The hyenas had dragged it all away, and she could see the kind of disbelief in her face as she had hung it perfectly in this branch, and I'm sure she thought it was out of the way of hyenas, but it wasn't. These hyenas jumped probably, I would say, over their body height, that sort of height up into the air, and then stretched fully up. It is actually quite a long way. Sorry, Seb, I'm in the way a little bit here. I'm going to try and reposition Seb so that he doesn't have to shoot over my head, because otherwise I'm going to ruin things for him. I just don't know if we're going to get a good view of him, Seb, but let's try. Joe, you want to know if leopards roar. Joe, leopards, it's not really a roar, more than what we call a saw. So it is a loud sound that is produced that is almost like roaring, but we call it sawing. So it is basically part of the roaring process, and it's why leopards are classified as pardus, which is the roaring cats, or the cats that are able to produce a roar. But we refer to it as sawing rather than roaring. Seb, do you want me to go forward a little bit more? Let's try. No, we'll be alright. It's not too bad, don't worry. We'll just keep our foot on. There we go. So, as much as I can go, Seb, I think, for now. But you can see he's watching the hyena. The hyena's moving around, so he's just checking to make sure that this hyena hasn't stolen anything from him. Also, you've got to be aware of hyenas as a young male leopard. But it just goes to show, when you have a situation like this with hyena and leopard on the ground, you can see they're both kind of seeing each other, and it's interesting because they're both fairly young individuals, so they know that there's a respect for one another. They're making sure that they're not going after each other, and that they respect the fact that they could get injured, and their main focus is what's in the tree. So they will leave each other alone. It's only if there was carcass on the ground that the hyenas would be quite a danger to Hosana. Shame, my boy, are you full and hot? Toby, wondering why the vultures haven't come to eat the carcass from the tree. Quite simply, they probably haven't seen it. It's not easy to see a carcass from above when there's foliage on it, and this particular tree does have foliage, and so it would be very difficult for the vultures to see those legs dangling from underneath the canopy. Remember, their point of view is from above, so it's not like us that is able to see a carcass in a tree from low down like we have with these ones, and they have a little bit harder time of it. They've got to try and actually see it from above. So things like buffaloes, carcasses and lions, when they kill, they tend to be out in the open and the vultures see them very easily, but things like this in a tree, very difficult for the vultures to see. You want to go back to your kill again. He seems to be very worried about his carcass. I think with the hyena moving around, he wants to make sure that it's still safe. I wonder if he'll go back up. You are too full though. You're like a beach ball, Hosana. Look at the size of that tummy. It is full, 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 full. And he has this face like he's just had the best meal ever, and he's just loving the fact that he's got a full tummy. Look at that, enjoying the breeze blowing. That is one content cat at this stage of the day. Full but content. And his eyes are getting darker by the day. It almost looks as though they are getting darker. He's kind of started with much lighter eyes than what Shongile had, but they seem to be getting more and more sort of darker as the days go on. Maybe it's just the way the light is hitting them at the moment that it seems that way, but they almost look as though they're a lot less yellow than what we've been seeing when he was still a cub with Shongile. But he's found himself a perfect spot. He's got a nice bit of shade from another guarri tree. You can see the guarri tree just on the right of where he is, and that's providing the perfect place for him to lie down. And it just shows you how well they camouflage. We had been here for about 5 minutes before we even noticed that he was here. If he lies down flat and puts his head down, you'll find that that mottled sort of color and those spots will all blend in together with the dappled light over that's coming through that guarri tree, and it becomes very difficult to see him. So lucky we saw him pop his head up, otherwise I don't think we would have found him here. We probably would have gone off to Treehouse Dam to look to see if he was potentially drinking and missed him completely. What are you listening to? Jacqueline, you're wondering if the leopard's eyesight will deteriorate as they get older. Yes, so their eyesight is going to get worse as they go. They'll develop, potentially develop glaucomas or cataracts, and so their eyesight will worsen as they get a little bit older, much like us as people. But it's still very good. Either way, they're still going to have great eyesight. And if their eyes are damaged, we have seen a number of females with one eye, and they're still able to do just fine out here. They will use their other senses like hearing and their whiskers and their sense of smell to be able to be successful. So we know that Safari, Karula's mother, she had one eye for 6 years, and she managed to survive all the way up to over 19 years old, which is incredibly old for a leopard. So, you know, they are able to deal with the loss of sight in one eye, and as they get older, I'm sure their eyesight is not quite as sharp as when they're a little bit younger. What are you watching? It's funny to watch him. He's still got a bit of youth in him. He's very kind of twitchy and lurks around all over the place, and any movement sort of triggers him to have a look. You'll find with more adult or older leopards, when they have carcasses like this, so somebody like Tingana, he wouldn't worry too much at all. He'd be kind of, even if there was a rustle in the grass behind him, he'd kind of maybe open his eye, but he wouldn't be nearly as alert as what Hosana is. I'm sure he's very thankful for the breeze that is blowing today, because without that I would imagine he would be one hot cat. It's gotten very warm, and especially in the sun now it's starting to feel like there's a bit of a bite to it, so I would imagine he's pretty happy of the wind that's blowing. But it's quite cool to actually see underneath the tree here there's bits of rumen and fur all over the place here. It's quite nice to see actually. So we've got bits of the impala fur which have been plucked off, so you'll find our leopard will try not to actually eat that. He's going to try and pick that off and throw it down. So there's the fur that you can see, and there'll be a bit of it maybe is from the steenbok as well, and that's from underneath. And then just to the left of that is a bit of the rumen up against the tree there. So that's the stomach content of said impala or steenbok that's been pulled out and dropped to the ground. They're not going to want to eat that. They'll eat the lining of the stomach, but that will be the rumen that is ejected and then left on the ground. And it's got quite a pungent smell. That's why it brought my attention to it, is the smell. Oh, Sept, look at the hyena and Hosana, they're together. He's busy watching the hyena. The hyena's just in line. Isn't that cool? So you've got leopard there, and then hyena just behind it in the background. You can just see it poking through the bushes. Now Hosana is watching the hyena's not watching Hosana at all. And there goes the hyena strolling off into the distance. So you can see Hosana just watching the hyena moving off, and that hyena is moving off to where Thandi was yesterday. There's been no reports of Thandi this morning. But if she's not still lurking around, we might just watch and see what happens there. And while we do that, I believe James is bumbling around the beautiful Mara. So let's go across to him and see what he's up to.
Yes. Look. A whole lot of small sausages. That's very, very sweet. 2 little litters of piglets and their mummies running into a very marshy area indeed. And we've come across here just exploring to see what is around before we head back up the hill. And beyond them, lots and lots of zebra. There you can see them in their droves. That's not a particularly big drove, but there's a much larger drove to the left-hand side of where you're looking there. Keep going. That's not the big drove. And again, there we are. Droves of them, you see. They'll do. Now, Patty, I believe you were asking whether or not the bones here are collected for educational purposes. Patty, no, they are not collected for educational purposes as far as I'm aware. I'm sure people do collect them from time to time, but no, there isn't a great deal of educational bone collection here as far as I'm aware. I suppose if you were a school in Narok, which is the city or capital of city is a very strong term, which is the capital of the county that we find ourselves in now, and you were a school there and you wanted to have some wildebeest skulls or something like that, I'm sure that that could be organized, but I don't think they're collected as a matter of course. I think we might have to turn around because I'm a little bit nervous that we're going to drive into something from which we will never escape without the use of a tractor. We'll keep going for now. I'm hoping desperately for a left-hand turn fairly soon. There's a right-hand turn. Left is where we want. This is properly fertile, this area, you can just imagine. And I believe many of you are oohing and ahhing over those little baby warthogs. Yes, they were fantastic. And so fast. Well, in fact, I think they look faster than they actually are because their little leggies run so quickly. Patty, you say that's your first baby warthog. Well, that's very exciting. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I think that they are up there with lions, lion cubs in the cuteness stakes. Now, please excuse my not looking at you when I'm speaking, but I'm just concentrating on this road, making sure that it doesn't become too wet and muddy and the tyres don't sink too completely. I think we may have reached the end of it here. Unless I can find an immediate left turn, we're going to go back. And can I? No, I cannot. Just round this corner. KR, you're wondering about whether or not warthogs actually attack their predators. KR, they will, absolutely. Many animals will attack their predators if they have to, when they get into this kind of last throw of the dice. And warthog are blessed with some very vicious tusks. The bottom teeth, which are for some reason or other known as tushes, and they are very, very sharp indeed, and will do serious damage to anything that they come into contact with. So absolutely, they will charge out of burrows quite often into predators, and it's not often that you'll find anything smaller than a big male leopard that will take an adult warthog. You won't find female leopards, or very seldom will you find female leopards with adult warthog prey, and even lions are sometimes reticent. And I believe that Mvula was recently charged by a warthog. Yes, I'm sure he has been many times. Tingana used to be something of a warthog specialist, but you won't find the females killing warthogs very often unless they're very young. Right, well, we found a road going in the right direction. All right. Now I think we're going to go across to Hosana while I try and extricate myself from this quagmire, and he definitely will take after his dad and kill warthogs at some stage. Craig, I want you to please move to the middle of the vehicle.
Well, hopefully he will. I'm sure he will. He's going to be a big boy, and I'm sure warthogs will be on the menu. We've seen him chasing piglets quite often, so it's only a matter of time until he gets it right and actually manages to get them. Of course, hunting warthogs is always quite a dangerous thing. It's never the easiest thing to do, and I've seen a number of leopards come quite short when it comes to hunting warthogs and get themselves into all kinds of trouble. Remember, Mufufenyan got hit in the head by a tusk and had this massive gash between his eyes and over the top of his head from a warthog tusk, so it's not an easy feat. So Hosana is going to have to probably bulk up a little bit more before he tangles with those big male warthogs that we have in this area. It's not going to be an easy animal to bring down. It's better off sticking with impalas for now until he grows a little bit larger. But it's interesting how the male leopards tend to go after these warthogs a lot more. We know Anderson is a huge exponent of warthogs as well. He likes to go from mound to mound, and Mvula, Tingana, they both do it as well. And you'll find Anderson will go and he'll actually go down the hole, and it's very uncommon to see leopards going into the hole of the termite mound where there's a warthog in, because often the warthogs are sitting with their tusks facing forward, and that leopard then gets a face full of tusk. So it's very strange to see, but Anderson backs himself and he goes crawling down, and often you see him in there, and then he grabs his warthog and pulls them out. And it's amazing to see how difficult it is to actually get those warthogs out of those holes. You would think that it would be quite easy once he grabs them to pull them out, but it's almost, it's like watching a champagne cork, effectively. I know it sounds horrible, but the warthogs almost wedge themselves in, and this leopard struggles, and eventually then he'll be able to like pop it out and the warthog comes out. But it's a lot of effort that goes into it, and there's obviously a lot of noise associated with warthog hunts. It's never the most pleasant thing to watch. But most, like I say, most of the male leopards that I've spent time around have a propensity to go after warthogs, particularly in those mounds. You'll often see them sitting. I remember Kashan male once sitting on top of a mound in Singita, and he picked off 7 warthog piglets before he was done in the morning. So each time a piglet would run out, he would grab one and put it on top of the mound and kill it, and then you'd wait and sit, and then another piglet would run out and you'd grab that. And by the end of the morning, like I say, he had a grand total of 7 of these piglets on top of the mound. It was quite something to actually watch. What was also interesting is that he ignored the adults completely. So he didn't go after the mother or the male that came out of that mound. He waited until the piglets started coming out and then grabbed them instead. So even though he had to do it 7 times in total, by the end of it he probably got quite a bit of meat out of it. The piglets weren't tiny, they were probably about 2 months old by then, so they were already put on a little bit of size. So 7 of them was a fairly decent meal for that leopard, and he ended up devouring those through the day. It's quite common to see is after a leopard's fed in the morning that he'll go and try and just groom himself, get rid of any of that meat or any bits of the carcass that potentially are on him. Make sure that that coat is nice and clean. He's actually looking very clean considering he's been feeding the last 2 days. A bit of blood around the muzzle area, but other than that, he's well groomed and certainly taking care of himself. Beautiful spotted pattern, isn't it? But you can see that breathing is very heavy, and that swollen tummy where the white is, and those back paws. So those are also going to get slightly larger. They're still little at this stage. The back paws will get bigger and more elongated. He's still growing. He's gone into a store. There the hyena is again. So you see he's now kind of lowering his body posture and to watch the hyena in the background. So Chris Rogue, you say that it looks like the hyena is Sol, which is one of Gwen's offspring. So it's at least nice to know. I wonder how you identify Sol. Maybe Chris Rogue, if you can let us know what's the identifying features. But it's going to be interesting because this hyena is now walking straight towards Hosana. You can see Hosana's got his kind of head up and is watching. And I wonder if this hyena is not going to come up the path. Look at this. They're kind of squaring off. And Hosana's getting low to the ground, trying to make himself as small as possible. No, he's decided I'm not having any of this. He's growling. Look at this. So you can see, look how close they are together. How cool is this? This is awesome. So the hyena is sniffing where Hosana is now lying. They're no more than, I would say, 2 meters apart at the moment. And Hosana is just watching, just to see. And the hyena is not really worried about Hosana. It's trying to see if there's any bit of the carcass that's there. But Hosana, I'm sure, is going to give way. Look how close they are. This is ridiculous. Hosana, you can't make friends with hyenas. And the hyena is going to promptly lie exactly where Hosana was lying. Hosana, what is going on here? This is just completely unusual. Thinks that these guys are eternal enemies all the time. Are you going to lie down right here next to him? It looks like Hosana might just decide to lie down right next to this hyena. He is too. There's a little bit of a growl from Hosana. He's not that impressed that the hyena stole his shady spot. This is really cool. You're going to go to the toilet. You're going to show that hyena what you think of him. Fair enough. Hopefully the wind is not... Hopefully there's not going to be downwind from where we are, because otherwise it's going to smell very pleasant. And I believe a lot of you are very confused by this interaction. Well, this is a typical situation from young individuals. Look, they're busy staring at each other. This is ridiculous. So 2 young individuals that are not too stressed by each other. They both kind of giving each other a bit of respect in that they'll look at each other. Hosana will growl. The hyena knows it's not really worth the effort to go after the leopard. And Hosana knows he's not going to fight with the hyena because he's going to get himself hurt. So that's why they're just kind of staring at each other. But it's ridiculous to see the 2 of them as close as they are. It really is. It's quite unusual, that's for sure. Patty, you say Hosana seems a bit nervous of the hyena. Well, I'm sure he's a bit nervous of the hyena. At the end of the day, the hyena could potentially do a bit of damage to him. You can see Hosana is just walking pretty much under the car at this stage, and behind Seb's backside and around the other side. So he will be a bit nervous. He's obviously going to take into account that the hyena could be dangerous to him, but at the end of the day... Where's Hosana?
Right behind us.
Is he still right behind us?
He's laying down, yeah.
Oh no. We might be stuck here for a while,
Yeah.
Seb. So if Hosana lies right behind us, there's no way I can go, because I can't go forward at all, so we'll have to just wait for Hosana to move. But he is, like I say, he's going to be a bit nervous of the hyena, because he knows if that hyena decides to actually get hold of him, he's going to have a serious problem, because the hyena's jaw power is so much. So he'll be a bit wary of him, but at the same time I think there's a bit of curiosity to see, hang on, what is this hyena up to, and how much can I push my luck? Also, he doesn't want the hyena to take his shade, so there's a bit of bravado, and as a male leopard gets older, so he'll be less tolerant of hyenas like this. If this was a big male leopard and this young hyena, you'd find that the big male leopard would have probably growled and hissed and stood its ground and not moved. But Hosana, being a little bit younger, is a bit wary that he might get himself into a bit of trouble. But how cool is that? That's not something you're going to see every day, that's for sure. That was very cool.
I can't see.
So Seb says he can't even film
Unless I
Hosana.
can.
So Seb's going to try and see if he can get Hosana from behind us here, because apparently he's lying. Oh, there, I can just see his paws behind the back of the vehicle. Mrs. Zero, you say, wow, what a moment to witness. Well, I agree, Mrs. Zero. It is an incredible thing to have seen. It's not something we're going to see every day. Now, unfortunately, Seb can't get to Hosana. That's how close he's lying behind us. He's literally lying behind the back wheel, so he's not going to be able to see him at all. I can see him just over my shoulder. I can see his little head peering out from behind the car, but other than that, he's going to be a bit hidden. So our hyena is sleeping, Hosana is sleeping. Everybody seems to have found their place, but that's going to mean that we're going to be stuck here until such time as Hosana decides to move. Hello, boy. He's busy just watching Seb with these big eyes. It's quite amazing actually to watch. So the hyena is kind of up and sort of looking around and listening, but Hosana is very curious as to what Seb is doing. He's kind of watching Seb all the time, and he's lying so close that it's quite interesting just to watch his behavior with Seb. You're making a friend there, Seb.
Yes, it's my friend. Boy.
It's incredible how relaxed these two cats are, Hosana and Shongile. Nikki, you say he's doing a tour of the vehicle. Well, hopefully he'll keep his tour to the ground and on the outside of the car and doesn't decide to jump on the car, because that won't be very pleasant at all. And it has happened. I have seen videos of leopards jumping onto cars, and while cheetah are one thing, a leopard is a completely different story. I certainly wouldn't want Hosana on this car at all, and we would try and stop him from doing that. If he even put his paws on, we'd start the car, and the vibration and the noise of the car would be enough to deter him and keep him at bay. And that's how it's got to be. Unfortunately, you can't get him into bad habits. He's not allowed to be on the cars, and so if he did try, we would just keep him at bay as much as possible. But it is incredible to kind of be sandwiched between these two as they watch each other. So Mrs. Zero, you say Seb and Hosana are having a bromance. Well, you should see it, Mrs. Zero. They're staring into each other's eyes. There's romance in the air. It's a soft, tender moment. I feel a little bit like a third wheel at the moment. I mean, maybe I should leave the two of them alone for some time. And no, I'm just kidding. Seb, don't worry. Shan will kill me if I leave you with Hosana. She'll be very concerned as to why you've got eyes for a leopard.
I think she would be very jealous.
Do you think she's going to be jealous? I'm sure she will be jealous. Okay, are you wondering why Seb and I are so relaxed when we're sitting between a hyena and a leopard? Well, the reason is, KR, is that neither of these animals want to do anything to us. They both have spent enough time around vehicles that they know we're not a threat in any way. You can see the hyena is sleeping. It's not even facing us at the moment. And Hosana behind us, well, he's watching us, but he's really just curious more than anything else. He's a relaxed individual. He knows that this vehicle is not trying to take the food away from him. We're not trying to chase him from the food. We're not trying to hurt him. And so it's a relaxed situation. It's just something that you have to sit and enjoy, and experience the two of them around us is just such a pleasure that it's nothing else that you can do. So there's no point in stressing. He's not going to hurt us in any way. He's really going to just try and kind of sit and watch and see what goes on. But I think he's moving. Is he moving those?
He's laid down again.
Oh no, I thought he
Even more
moved a little
behind
bit.
us.
Even more behind us. Oh well, that's okay. I see the hyenas also just sniffing around a little bit and watching. You can see he's looking at the leopard a little bit as well. I think these two are both curious of one another. Quite funny though that the hyenas lay exactly where Hosana was. It's almost like there was a competition over the shade of this area. So they seem to have kind of struck a deal now. Hosana's using our shade, the hyena using the shade of the guarri, and everybody seems quite content with life. There's a Cape turtle dove that's chiming in at the moment as well, over our shoulders. Now I heard something in the distance. Did you hear that, Seb? Sounded like an alarm call. I wonder if maybe Tundi's not moving around here somewhere, but it sounded quite far away. You can see the hyena's looking in the same direction that I heard it coming from, so over sort of on our right hand side. It almost sounded like a bushbuck alarm calling, but I can't hear it again. It's quite difficult with the earpiece in to hear on the right side. Yes, you can hear it in the distance.
Yeah, I heard something now, yeah.
So there's a kudu or a bushbuck alarm calling in the distance.
Branches breaking over there, no?
Might be. But I can hear the kudu
Yeah, there's elephants over there.
very clearly. And Seb has spotted some elephants
I
too.
don't know if I can put them on camera, but there's some elephants there.
So it's all happening. We've got kudu alarm calling, we've got elephants breaking branches, which is in the distance, and we've got a leopard behind us and a hyena to our left. It really is quite crazy. Hopefully our ellies will come down eventually. So somewhere in the distance there you can see the tail wagging of an elephant, and there's the rest of the body going forward. So there's the trunk. This is awesome. Everything is happening in this area. It's really quite cool just to be sitting here, and we're in a shady spot, so it's perfect. I wonder if our ellies will go down towards Treehouse Dam for a drink, or if they're going to come and sort of join the party that's under the tree. And while we do that, let's talking about party. I wonder what James is doing in his spiffy red jacket in the Masai Mara.
I think it's a snake eagle. It might be a... what is that? Yes, I'm talking. Can you hear me, Craig? You can hear me. Alice, can you not hear me? Oh, good. Right, Alice didn't know we were live. She must have thought I was talking to myself. Anyway, I wasn't. I was talking to you. All right, Alice, let's discuss it when I get home. Thank you. I believe Tristan's link was that I was looking spiffy in my red jacket. Thank you very much. Now, back to that bird. I don't know what it is. It looks like a snake eagle of sorts. It's too small to be a brown snake eagle. It's not brown, which should have been the first clue, of course. Could it possibly be a juvenile black-breasted? It could be, but is it possible, Craig, that we're looking at the short-toed snake eagle? No, it isn't. I'm looking at it now, and it looks nothing like that. I don't think. It's definitely a snake eagle, though. It's probably a juvenile basileer or something ridiculous. I'm just looking now to see the colours. Oh, it's not. It possibly could be a short-toed snake eagle, but the distribution is not good for this area. I wonder if we're not just looking at a fairly pale juvenile brown snake eagle, which is so deeply boring. Not because it's a brown snake eagle, but because I got so excited about what it might be. Western banded snake eagle, it is possible. Just check the size of the western banded snake eagle. Now, the immature is very barred on the front. Very barred on the front, and not pale like that. At least not sort of uniform. Roshni, you say you're sure the eagle spotted me in my bright red jacket. Roshni, as unquestionably untrue, at least true as that is very, very unhelpful. Does anybody know what bird this is? I think we're going to have to go around the other side of it. I think it could easily be a western banded snake eagle. In fact, I'm going with western banded snake eagle. I'll tell you why. It has got yellow eyes. It's got a yellow cere. It has got a uniform sort of front part up until around about where a belly button would be. And then it's a little bit barred, and it's got yellowish legs. So I think what we have there, everybody, is the western banded snake eagly. Let's go a little bit forward. Trying desperately not to get stuck on this road, which I've nearly done 5 or 6 times already today. Oh dear. Ooh, that's a really good picture of him. Yeah. That's a lifer for me, everybody. That means it's the first time I've seen that bird. Craig, have you ever seen the western banded snake eagle before? No, you have not. So don't say I don't ever do anything for you. Yeah, good. I'm most pleased with that, everybody. How many of you have seen western banded snake eagles before? I'm sure that must be a first for some. Beautiful. Okay, then we have across the way, let me drive a little bit forward, we've got some nice giraffes. In fact, I don't need to go forward, we've got them going across here. Just while we look at those, Roshni's comment about the redness of my jacket, of course, is completely true. The birds would definitely be able to see it, but remember that most animals out here don't see very well in colour. And so while anything that is shiny and reflective, so yes, bright yellow would reflect colour, that would then alert animals. Something like this red jacket, probably not as, it's definitely not as camouflage as, say, a blue one or grey one would be, but not quite as bright as you might think it is. And then in the background, we have the Mara's second equid species. I'm not sure if you can see it back there. You see them way back there, Craig. The second equid of the Mara. If you zoom straight in over there, over the top of that, where that car is going between the two giraffes. Keep going to the right and zoom in there. And there we are. You see them there? You can see there a group of horses. Now, horses, of course, are not native to the Mara, but people who ride them quite like to bring them down here, and I think I'd really like to do that. Taylor and I, well, we used to ride horses when we were little people, and I think we'd both quite like to do a little horse safari across the Mara. Craig, would you like to do a horse safari? No, Craig wouldn't. Craig would rather have a motorbike safari. All right, let's go across to Taylor. Apparently she is looking green, or is looking at something green. I hope it is the former. No, the latter.
James, please can we go horse riding? I know that Alice would also like to go on a horseback safari, and I suspect Rebecca would thoroughly enjoy that, seeing as the only horseback safari I've done in the bush has been with Rebecca. Now we're looking at a plant, so take some screenshots, have a look here, because we're playing the game. What plant do we have here? We do get it in South Africa, so that's the clue that I'm going to give you, but you're welcome to share the screenshots around. It's fairly common throughout Africa. In fact, there is one other plant that you can get it confused by, but it's not that one. But I've spoken about it often. It even grows around Vuyatela Dam in the Sabi sand, and it's not a very nice plant. So hashtag Safari Live with your answers, and we'll see who gets it first. I did tell Alice which one it is, so she should be able to pick out the right answers. But it's got quite a large leaf. This is a small one. It's obviously only just started growing, but big leaves. The leaves can be quite prickly. You can see that typical white flower, and I'll give you one more clue. It also has a seed pod, which is green and then turns sort of black when it bursts open and expels the seeds, and that's all I'm going to tell you about it. But there aren't any seed pods on this one just yet. It's still quite a young plant, but they grow in these very poor, disturbed areas. So you can see when they are grading roads, when they're digging, and normally these little plants pop up all over. But we'll move on from the plant. There's some giraffe up ahead we can go and have a look at while you all think. I have no doubt, though, that there are going to be a couple of you that will get this quite easily. I'm just checking that there's no cars behind her. Wondering why I'm looking down like that. There's a little gap between the seats. It's much easier than doing this. I seem to have lost some steering today. I don't know what's happened since last night. My arms are exhausted. When I turn, I have to use both hands now and with lots of force. So I feel like I've been to the gym and I've done about 50 repetitions of a 6 kg weight. I might have stiff arms this afternoon. Probably going to have to tape my hands to the steering wheel, but I'll just park so you can see the giraffes. So many giraffes. Let's poke our nose here. There we go. Hi, giraffe. Wonderful, Alice. Let's hear some of the answers. Lara Moore, you saying nightshade? Good guess, but it is not the nightshade. Unless it's got another common name that I'm unaware of. Sizzler, you say a potato? No, it's not a potato, but there is the gif apple, the poison apple plant out here, which is related to the potato tree, if I'm not mistaken, or in the potato family, rather. But that's not that one, but we will try and find you some of that to show you. Any other answers? Any correct ones, I wonder? ML, you said a monkey thorn. Oh, you're going to have to go back to the last bushwalk I did. I'm pretty sure the last bushwalk or the bushwalk before, I spoke about those beautiful plants. Now, plant is something that a giraffe is not going to eat. Not many animals feed on it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, there we go. Good old Judy. Judy H coming in with the win there. Well done. I actually suspected that you were going to get this correctly, I must admit, and the answer was it is a datura. It's datura stramonium to be precise. Milpitter or stinkblader is another name for it, and it's not a very nice plant. It's highly toxic, particularly the seed pods. Well, I used to tell you about the Xhosas down on the southeast coast of South Africa, how when they were wanting to speak to their ancestors, that's normally what they would take. They would ingest the seeds and it would send them in a trance-like state. But unfortunately, they don't know the dosage. So one seed may give you a fantastic trip for one person or make you see your ancestors or chat to the people on the other side. However, others, it might kill you. So you got to be careful with that. But also the leaves are really helpful. If you dry them, you can actually smoke them and it can help with relieving asthma and bronchitis and all those things, which I find to be quite interesting. However, Tristan is still in the Sabi sand. He does not have the tallest creature in the world like we do. He is still, and we think he's following a hyena.
We are with the hyena and with Hosana. The elephants all have just filed past us and have gone. Unfortunately, there's no more view of them. It was beautiful though. They were walking straight across and Hosana was watching them, and we had the hyena and the leopard on either side of us and the elephants in front of us. It was really quite special. So they didn't stick around for long though. They kind of seem as though they're on a serious mission to get somewhere. So they were walking very quickly to the east, and you can see Hosana is now man down. He is a tired cat. It's hot and he just can't be bothered anymore, so he's now going to sleep. And you can see the little tongue sticking out at the bottom there. You silly boy, you don't look very clever when you have your tongue out like that. But he's hot, and so his mouth is open and he's just helping to breathe and cool himself down. But you can see he's still very alert with the wind that's rustling the grass, and he knows there's a hyena close by. He's got to be a little bit more alert as to what's happening. We haven't heard those kudu alarm call again. They sounded quite far from where we are, so I think that's something that we'll probably have to try and look at this afternoon rather than having a look now. I don't think we've got enough time to find where that was. It sounds like somewhere off Pangolin Track, Chilapan area, somewhere in that general vicinity. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Tundi or maybe even Tumba that's moving around in that side. I'm not sure where Tumba last was seen. I think he was last seen on Chitwa, so maybe he's that side and is coming back looking for Mom. Although he tends to stay in one place when Mom leaves him. He doesn't seem to move around. He's not like some of the other cubs that I've hung around with that seem to be naughty and move a little bit more. We know that Shongile and Hosana never seem to sit still. But I'm not sure about Shongile. For those who are wondering about updates, I haven't heard anything. I don't know. I haven't heard anywhere or any updates of her. Seb, was there anything while I was on leave? So Arnava, you were asking as well? No, nothing.
No.
I don't know. I'll have to ask around and just see. I'll ask some of the other guides if there's been any sightings of her in other parts of the reserve. She might be on Little Gari at the moment, which means we won't see too much of her, but I'll ask the guys that traverse there in case there is some sort of sign of her that side, but not too much. But we know Shongile, she's like this. She kind of flies under the radar. We see her every now and then we'll go a week or 2 or 3 weeks without seeing her, and then all of a sudden she pitches up again, and she kind of arrives in the most random situation. So well, hopefully we'll see her soon and we'll be able to find her. And I'm surprised that she hasn't found Hosana. She tends to walk around this area quite often, so it would have been nice if we had had the two of them together here. But with Tandi and Shadow being here, I suppose it's not a great place for Shongile to be at the moment. It's better that she somewhere else and flying low and keeping out of harm's way. But that is one very sleepy, very tired kitty. I wonder if those elephants are moving so fast, if they're trying to get down towards the Mulawati now with the wind that's picked up. You know, Ellies don't really like the wind, so I wonder if they're not trying to get into the drainage lines where it's going to be a little bit more pleasant and less windy, because they really did move very quickly. They went from feeding on a tree and then all of a sudden the whole herd just started going and disappeared within about 5 minutes, so something got them going. Maybe they also picked up the scent of this carcass, and smell of death sometimes gets elephants moving a little faster. Our hyena and was also as asleep as Hosana at this stage. Mr. P, you're asking if I think Hosana is particularly pale on the bottom side, so like underneath the, I suppose you're referring to his stomach? No, in no way. He's just like any other leopard. They're all very white underneath. If you see any leopard lying like that, you'll find that they have these very white bellies. So Tandi, Shadow, they're all the same. In terms of his coat color, he's lighter than what Tumba is. Tumba's got a more gold color than what Hosana does, but he's still got a beautiful sort of orangey goldish color around the back, and particularly right down the middle of his back is very pretty. So, Hosana and the hyenas are both hyena, should I say, are both sleeping and taking it very easy, and I don't think we're going to see much more for them, so I think we'll probably start to make our way back, but I believe James Hendry is in the Mara with some of our descendants.
There we have an olive baboon that is now sitting on the little termite mound with his hands in a position that might be described as relaxed. And where his friends are, I don't know. He's clearly lost them. Where are your friends? He's a young male, so it's not unusual to find them alone. And around here there are a number of sort of wildebeest carcasses that have been left. Unclear as to how most of them died. And things like that olive baboon, and indeed we saw warthogs doing it the other day, and some bush pigs, will go and snack off the carrion every so often. And I wonder if he isn't looking for a bit of protein for his breakfast, as we will be doing very shortly. It's just starting to warm up a bit now, which is quite nice, as we head up the hill towards camp. And we'll just have one last sort of scan over the whole expanse of the eastern horizon, and I'll tell you that I can see buffalo by the 10, zebra by the 100, wildebeest to the power of 0, elephants many, grass as far as the eye can see, and not a Dothraki anywhere in sight. Never mind. And the wildebeest all off to the south. Will they return? Will they not return? That is the question, of course, that all of you are asking yourselves constantly, losing sleep over it. 2 minutes left, everyone. So please send through your last questions, #live, or you can use the chat stream on the YouTube, the chat. But it cannot be Jasmine, sure. Up full forest here. Mr. P, you want to know if there are any wild horses in Africa? Please excuse the poll, I can't move on account of the fact that we'll roll down the hill. Mr. P, no, there are no wild... Well, I mean, there are feral horses in Namibia, known as the wild desert horses of Namibia, but they're an escaped population of horses with very interesting history. Apparently they were German. They weren't German horses necessarily, but they belonged to German soldiers, and I think after the war they were just released into the desert on their own. Those are the only wild ones there. We also have something called a wild ass in Somalia, around that area. Wild ass, of course, is, well, it looks a bit like a donkey, and if you are a connoisseur of horse flesh, which I am to a certain extent, you will find the ass slightly less attractive than the horse. I just realized what that must have sounded like. There's a battalier there, Craig. And no, now it's going to fly into the roof, isn't it? Sorry about that. Okay, everybody, we're going to grind to a halt here. Oh, there's some wildebeest. Good grief, look at that, Craig, 2 of them. We're going to say goodbye to you. Thank you very much for coming along the ride. I'm very pleased we had hyenas and leopards at Djuma, that Taylor found you lions, and we found you the grey-crowned crane, of course. Many thanks for your questions and comments. We will see you this afternoon, of course, at 4 o'clock East Central African Time. Bye-bye.